Hi, Andrew.
Hey, how are you?
Fine, thank you. I'm now talking to you from Dagupan, Philippines.
Oh, wow. How's the weather?
It's almost a 50 degree. Not
That's
only
too-
just global warming, Dagupan is the hottest place in Philippines. It's quite
Yeah.
famous.
That's too much. That's
Too much, right?
that's not. I couldn't go
it's
there.
a so-called hibernation in the summer. In my case, at the hotel.
I wish you the best of luck.
Anyway, this country is English-speaking country.
Yeah.
So whenever I come here, of course, I have to use English, right? And then, however, people can expect that case like a Filipino, everybody can speak perfect English. No, not at all. Of course,
Right.
there are accent, or somebody cannot speak English well, of course, or sometimes so-called broken English is everywhere.
Okay.
And so when I see it, then I'm going back to see about Japanese situations, where Japanese speak so good English, can speak, I believe, can speak so good English, like some kind of ordinary Filipino. Well, even if grammar is not well or vocabulary is limited, but somehow Japan is ranked worst level of English-speaking so-called ability as a country. And so this comparison is really like shocking for me.
Yeah.
So,
When you say worst level, do you mean the worst level in Asia? It's not the worst level in the world.
in the world, I believe, OECD, which is like a kind of a trading kind of a organization all over the world, right? And this is one of the worst country. I don't know what is the standard of judgment. This is another question. But actually, but another resources say Japan is number 80 something, and China is number 60 something, and Korea is number 36 or something like that.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
But I know many years means like 6 or 7 years ago, Japan was better than China.
Yeah.
But now China is much better, and the one article say it's a kind of not only just the education and teachers issue, but also like a university. For example, in Beijing, if people go to the famous university in Beijing, people can communicate in English, which was not available many years ago.
Interesting.
But right now, it is no problem. It's a kind of article said. But if you have any comment, because you are living here in Japan a long time,
That's
and
right.
you use a different language as Japanese, so-called Japanese. You can Japanese, right? Which means like technically you are bilingual, and
to some degree.
Where you are Japanese, it's really almost, without any exception, I can understand it. Of course, I know that you are struggling about some vocabularies.
Sure.
But it's a natural issue, right? So
yeah,
natural issue. So having said that, do you have any comment about Japanese English educations?
How many hours do you have?
Where can I say, like, of course, just make it compact, but
Sure.
you can we can have a conversation like the next 15 minutes or so.
Okay. So traditionally, English education in Japan has been focused more on parsing grammar than anything else, which has led to a population that can sort of deal with reading and to some extent writing, but not conversing, but basically no communicative abilities.
It's a famous story, right? It's quite a famous story because the Japanese stick with the grammar or no mistake, and that perfectionist. That is why afraid of making a mistake, and accordingly they are shy to speak out.
Yeah, it is extremely cultural. Yeah, it is not a surprise.
And the people try to break that issue a lot for many years, but never ever achieved.
Well, it's also a very conservative country, so achieving any sort of change is difficult. Now, I know that the the national entrance exam has changed recently to emphasize 4 English skills rather than just parsing. And that's sort of a step in the right direction, but it's a really small step. I think there is a lot more that could be done. And there are a lot of different approaches that you could take here. One would be to mandate, for example, a task-based learning approach. Go ahead.
Tell me more about task-based approach.
Sure. So task-based learning, it's a popular approach that emphasizes the use of language in sort of meaningful real-life situations. So what does that mean? That means something like role plays. So like ordering food in a restaurant or something. It means problem-solving tasks. So maybe students work together to like plan a trip or organize an event. It could be sort of simulation activities. So people are like in a simulated business meeting or a simulated like news broadcast or something like that. It's a lot of fun. I'm also really big on this approach because I recently helped write a textbook with Sanseido, a major publishing company in Japan that focuses on task-based learning. And I think it's a pretty good book. It's called My Way, if anybody wants to buy it.
Sure. But I know that. Sorry. I know that you are involved about even a kind of entrance exam kind of contents issue for the some kind of a juku school, prep school.
Yeah.
And based on that experience, maybe you may have a lot of point you want to point it out.
Well, it's a little bit frustrating because as much as people have emphasized 4 skills, this isn't a test of communication. It's a test of understanding. If they wanted to do a test of communication, they would ask you to communicate, and that's just not part of the test. So it's like I said, it's a step in the right direction, but it's a small step. So what could be done more definitively? What could be a stronger approach? Now, there's the approach that Singapore took, which was controversial. So in the 1960s, Singapore basically said, all right, we're going to make English the primary language of instruction in schools. But to make sure we preserve our culture, our cultural heritage, we will also require that people take a course in their mother tongue. So
like Chinese or something like that.
That's right. Yeah. And well, there are lots of mother tongues in Singapore. I can't remember how many, which means that there are lots of different languages taught in school. But yeah, so things like math and history, as I understand it, all of those are taught in English, but your mother tongue is also one course that you take during the day. Now that is great for commerce. Singapore is now a business hub. So in that sense, it was very successful. But it also disenfranchised an entire generation who could no longer effectively communicate with the other generation. So the older people who didn't have English instruction in school, they were sort of, just brushed aside, which not great. But
it's a kind of life, I believe. For example, like a computer is same, like a computer literacy is required everywhere, time by time. And of course, my generation was terrible because, when I was young, it's a telex or like even it's a kind of dead word already, fax, then gradually, so-called the calculator, then gradually going into the computer era, email started and even 90s and the website and then something like that. Every time something new, we have to learn.
So well, I'm glad you brought up technology because it leads to an interesting point. When I arrived in Japan, I was surprised to find out that a lot of people didn't have PCs at home. So in the US, it was typical for people to have PCs at home, but Japan sort of skipped the home PC generation and went straight to mobile, right?
Exactly. That is the reason. There are reasons there.
Yeah. So this is very interesting because it's possible that right now Japan is very, very far behind in English instruction. That means to me that it's sort of ripe for disruption. And so this is the perfect time to take sort of a drastic measure. We have, ChatGPT now. I don't know if you read the CEO of Duolingo, Louis Van Aan. He's been talking about how, a lot of teachers are going to lose their jobs because ChatGPT is better than a lot of teachers. Now, it's not better than the best teachers, not at all, but it's better than terrible teachers.
I have a comment about it because, of course, ChatGPT, is, gives us a kind of lot of answers. But I believe Japanese can use ChatGPT as a communicative skill with AI, which means AI, in case of the AI, people doesn't have to be shy.
That's true. That's true.
So maybe, ChatGPT combined with Siri, for example,
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And I can talk to the computer to find out some kind of, how can I say, information. Then after that, to polish up that information or upgrade that information, we can chat with the computer. And then that is a good way to learn how to speak or even how to interrupt because, it's the same way, just a counterpart is machine, that's all. But maybe that is one of the ideas, maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah, and people are already making apps like that. So people have designed apps to interface with ChatGPT and produce voice. So it's actually like you're talking to a person. And I think that's a great way to learn to communicate. Is that going to be effective in the near term? And could people in Japan take advantage of that? Maybe.
Maybe, but it's a matter of the teacher's mindset, I believe.
It's a matter of the teacher's mindset. It's also a matter of motivation. So if you have a motivated student, somebody who really wants to learn English, nothing's going to stop them. They're going to learn English. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the environment is. If you have unmotivated students, which is probably the majority of students, that's the problem, right? So
another problem is any change happens. Always, of course, it's a natural issue that there must be some kind of chaos,
Of course, yeah.
Right? And right now, Tokyo Metropolitan Government installing like a conversational communicative English education in the middle school and junior high. Yeah. And a lot of parents start complaining about it because, my kids can't understand the grammar at all, or vocabulary level is going down, and the kids are struggling, and they are losing interest about English itself.
Yeah.
And tons of complaints now, like a flood, going to the metropolitan government. But do you think maybe, but of course, struggle is struggle, frustration is frustration, but it is a good idea to continue this path for Tokyo?
Well, I don't know exactly how Tokyo implemented it, but I would say they're taking the wrong approach. If everybody's unhappy and scores are going down, one sort of middle ground approach that, well, I don't know how middle it is. It's not as extreme as other approaches, but CLIL, content and language integrated learning, is probably the most effective approach that could be taken right now in Japan. So what does that mean? So basically, you're teaching courses in both English and Japanese. So some courses are taught in English, some courses are Japanese. Sometimes you teach math in English, sometimes you teach it in Japanese. So basically,
mingling the two languages.
That's right. So it's not like you just have English as one course during the day. That's just not effective. We have 40, 50, 60 years of evidence that just has not been effective. Instead, English it's part of the entire curriculum. You have to be using English every day.
Wow, but it is a very tough job for the teachers.
Yes. So the two most difficult parts about this, number one, students need to have some sort of base level of English in order to understand anything at all. Number two, the teachers need to be able to use English. So how do we address this? One idea is to spend a significant amount of government money to import teachers. We have the JET program. So for people who don't know, the JET program is it's basically a cultural ambassadorship program. So you have people from, I think, 55 different countries that come and stay in a middle school or high school or a bunch of middle school and high schools for a few years, acting as an assistant language teacher. And I think this has been an extremely effective program insofar as cultural exchange is concerned, but perhaps an ineffective program insofar as English instruction is concerned. And I
They
wonder
have
if
been
it's
doing that a long time, actually, more than 20 years of a JET program, I believe.
oh yeah, much more.
Is any improvement of the quality of the education yet?
Well, so that's the thing. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding because some people, they're assistant language teachers, right? So some people assume that the primary objective is for teaching English, but that's not the case. It's more the primary objective is cultural exchange. I wonder if that's still important at this point. Cool Japan has been pretty effective. Japan is pre-pandemic, Japan was one of the most popular tourist destinations in the world. Japan is culturally, people are interested in Japanese culture. I don't know if JET is no longer, I don't know if JET is still important for that specific goal. If the major goal is to teach English, I wonder if we sort of put JET on hold and actually bring in, qualified foreign teachers. I'm not saying all JET, I'm going to get in trouble here because I don't want to say that all JET people are not qualified, but they're not people with master's degrees in for the most part, teaching English and other subjects. So.
But so that you mean by using kind of foreign teacher from abroad, to use as a cultural exchange tool, which means they will talk about their own culture and exchange the Japanese culture as well as maybe Irish culture or American culture.
So that's what JET is. But my proposal is to bring in. So forget about the cultural exchange. Bring in people with master's degrees who can teach math or history or other subjects.
Yeah, you say so, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you have any idea because of course, whenever talking about the English issue, the teacher is blamed, and also not only teachers but also system is blamed.
Sure.
And of course, even if just blaming, nothing can be changed. Of course, that is why. If you have any suggestion to the teacher who is struggling, to improve their English educational quality for kids to learn more like a communicative English. Of course, they have to. Of course, it is simple to say, just change the mindset. Of course, I would say change the mindset, but it is tough. So what kind of suggestion you can give?
Well, I should preface this by saying that the demands on teachers in Japan are extremely high. So to say you need to do more is that's sort of a difficult pill to swallow because they're already doing so much and they're already so overworked. But specifically for an English teacher, to be a better English teacher, you need to be a better English communicator. So to be a better English communicator, you need to be using English all the time. And these days there are cheap and simple ways to do that. The cheapest and simplest way is to speak online. There are schools, I know you're very familiar with this. There are schools in the Philippines that will do this fairly cheaply, and their English isn't, say, perfect American English, but you don't need perfect American English to communicate. English is a tool. It doesn't need to be perfect. I don't speak if you analyzed this YouTube video, you would see that my English is all over the place, but I'm still effectively communicating. Yeah,
and also on the other hand, English teachers struggling point is, of course, English is a communicative tool, and the people need the contents. Contents means what is English? How to use how to explain about that contents by English. That is important, right? So sometimes teacher does not have it. That is my point also. Maybe interesting teacher must have some kind of curiosity of the other cultures or societies, or even the kind of a political issue, whatever it is.
Sure.
Then we can bring that kind of things in a conversation. That case, it is quite a fruitful education.
I totally agree. And these teachers, in an ideal world, these teachers would be consuming a lot of foreign media, whether it's books, whether it's movies, whether it's news. But again, the demands on these teachers are up to here. I feel like this is something not just experience in Japan. You know, the teachers the world over. I'm going to plug my sister's book here because my sister just published a book called The Teachers. And it is all about the struggles of teachers in America. And, you know, it's hard. It's hard in America. It's hard in Japan. People, the demands are just too much. It's so difficult to say you need to do more. But when we're trying to come up with a solution to, you know, these specific problems, it's always, well, they need to do this and this and this as well. Otherwise, they can't do it. So it's tough.
My last question, you know.
Go for it.
Because, you know, I'm regretting these days, like, I mean, Tokyo's status is going down, particularly financially or kind of as an industrial basis. The reason is simple because a lot of foreign people, or I mean, people from all over the world consider coming in Tokyo in a business, there are no English available. And comparing with Singapore, of course, comparing with Hong Kong, or comparing with other major cities in Asia, you know, but actually Tokyo, you know, if English can be spoken by many people or more people, that case, Tokyo can be recovered as a hub of the kind of economy or a hub of industry of the world. Just a simple question.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. The simple answer is it's not just English, right? So, you know, you have, I mean, you have culture that goes along with this. So there is a specific way to do things in business in Japan, and it tends to be slow compared to a lot of Western countries.
Oh yeah, that's wrong. Yeah, I don't know why, but actually people don't take a risk anyway. So
there are all sorts of issues we could talk about. You know, Japan is a very risk-averse country, but that feeds into it, right? So in order to avoid as much risk as possible, there tends to be a very slow and calculated approach to try and avoid all eventualities. And I think that works very well in some industries, specifically the automotive industry. I know, so my last car was a Japanese car. It was a Honda. My parents, I think they both have Japanese cars right now. And, you know, with the automotive industry and a lot of technical industries, that sort of commitment to perfection or trying to achieve perfection is great because it leads to reliability. But in terms of just business, you know, that's not going to cut it, because people these days, there's a balance between, you know, how reliable do you want it and how quickly do you want it. And these days, everybody wants things faster and faster and faster, and Japan just can't keep up. So even if Japan were to change everything to English today, it still wouldn't keep up because there are so many cultural elements at play that keep it from catching up.
Sure, it is ironical things because, you know, of course, you know, if people can change education quickly, that case, everything can be changed quickly.
Sure.
So, you know, it's a linked, I believe. All right. Thank you, Andrew. You know,
thank you very much. It was a pleasure to talk about this.
Let's keep making this conversation, you know, continued. You know, the reason is simple because, you know, I really want Japan to keep the ability more and more to contribute to the world. I
do too. Yeah, it's one of the reasons I'm here.
It's regrettable right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Take care.